Hello everyone, welcome to the Weeb Years. We are a podcast that looks at the Western anime boom of the 90s and the 2000s, and my name is Beanie.
I'm Laurel.
Isn't it nice to watch something that's just nice?
Yes. And this is, it's so nice. It's so nice, it's so cozy.
Not to say that we haven't watched good things, because we have. Most of the things that we've watched have been good. But this is just, I don't know, this is just the first thing that we've watched that's just made me feel nice.
This is the first thing we've watched that has the same vibes as Animal Crossing.
That is a wild as fuck statement. Today we watched Aoi Hana, otherwise known as Sweet Blue Flowers.
So I had seen this. This is the first one we've done that I've seen that you have not.
We finally got one.
Yes! And it's lesbians!
Yeah! It's a year. We got our first Yuri, we got our first slice of life. Thing about me, I fucking love slice of life. I am a sucker for a good, cozy slice of life show. I especially am a big fan of the cute girls doing cute things genre, at least when it's not being horny. Like, those shows where it's just the creator is very focused and very knowledgeable on a single topic, and they just want to write about that thing. It's like, oh, I love fishing. I want to write a fishing anime. I'm going to make a show about high school girls who just go fishing all the time. I love that shit. That's not what this is, but I love
Is this a personal attack? Because my favorite anime is about high school boys going fishing.
Oh, I know what you're talking about, but I forget the name.
Tsuritama,
yeah, that's right, yeah. Like, a very recent example is I really loved DIY, Do It Yourself. That came out, like, last year, I think. That one was really cute.
I don't think I've even heard of that one.
Ooh, I'll have to, remind me to send you a clip of that or something at some point. It's very fun.
I might have to spend the next 2 days watching anime.
You have plenty of time. Oh, speaking of which, yes, you might notice that Laurel sounds a little like shit.
Sorry.
Don't apologize, you had surgery.
Yeah, it's just congestion post-surgery. I just have asthma, so I get a lot of congestion and it just kind of sticks there. I'm feeling much better. I just sound like shit.
Yeah.
And actually, I sound much better today and yesterday than I did on the weekend. I sounded worse before.
I'm glad you're recuperating.
Yeah.
I didn't want to have to replace my co-host already.
Oh, you weren't going to have to. I would have found a way to record from bed if I had to, if it came to that.
5 episodes from now, Laurel is just replaced with a text-to-speech program as she types everything out.
Shit, what were we talking about before? Because I had a thought and I've completely lost it.
The fact that we watched Sweet Blue Flowers.
Moe. We were talking about Moe.
Well, we were talking about Slice of Life, but Slice of Life is often Moe.
Yes, okay. I remembered what I was going to say. I think Slice of Life also does really well when it's paired with certain other genres where it can really thrive. And I think this show is an example of Slice of Life and drama kind of coming to a head.
Yeah, like I'm usually a sucker for any sort of slice of life, be it like comedy or drama or anything, but I think the dramas are the one that especially like that really gets you most of the time.
I personally just love drama as a genre. And I think Slice of Life is almost like a tool that you can apply to whatever piece of media you're creating to make it feel more grounded, make it feel more genuine. And I think that really works for shows like this that are just supposed to be about human beings being human beings.
Yeah. Speaking of which, let's start talking about Sweet Blue Flowers.
Watching this show was so nostalgic. Not just because of, like, the fact that I watched this when I was the character's age and now I'm revisiting it as an adult with more context in a more queer positive society. Like, we're not where I think we'd like to be, but it's way fucking better than 2014.
Oh, yeah. Way fucking better than 2009, which is when this would have first come out. Well, the anime, at least. The manga was a little earlier than that.
And so another subject I wanted to broach on this show is it's not just nostalgic because of that. It's nostalgic because all of the works that they reference were things I studied in high school.
That's something we can touch on when we get to it in the story, like the plays and such.
Yeah, but isn't that weird? And like, like I was watching it and I was like, I've read this, what the fuck? Is it just because it came out in 2009?
I had read none of them. I had heard of Wuthering Heights and that was it.
That was my favorite out of them. Well, Le Petit Prince I think was my favorite, but Wuthering Heights was second. I really like Wuthering Heights.
That was really cute how you pronounced it in the French.
Le Petit Prince. I read it in French class because it's originally French.
Oh.
So we read it in, I think, grade 11 French class.
Look at you having alternate language classes.
It's mandatory here.
So, Sweet Blue Flowers began as a manga written by Takako Shimura, who is known for her stories involving a lot of like queer and trans themes and characters. Her other major work, Wandering Sun, is about 2 trans kids. I really want to read that at some point. That's definitely going on the list.
Oh, that sounds fantastic.
Interestingly, as far as I found in research, I don't think that Takako Shimura is queer at all, at least not openly. Like, all of the interviews I could find with her, she seems to talk like she just enjoys writing about these things, and it's not really coming from any sort of personal experience. But if that is true, that honestly makes it even more impressive, because the quality of the writing regarding those themes is really well done in a way that I automatically would have just assumed, like, oh, this is written by a queer person. But apparently not.
Let's see. Sorry, I have my anime list page open and I'm going through it. Oh, she's a Twitter.
Ooh.
Oh, she has a second Twitter for boy love. That's incredible! Holy shit.
The manga started in 2004 and ran until 2013, and it was published in a magazine called Manga Erotics F, which focuses on, quote, artsy sex comics.
Which is wild, because this is very not horny.
I was so getting ahead of myself a little bit, we'll talk about it more near the end, but I did bother to actually read all of the manga after watching the anime. It does get a little more... trying to think of how to say it. Like, it gets more sexual, but it's never horny. There is nudity, there is sex, and it's not just like in the opening for the anime, the last shot of the OP is the 2 girls, like, they're fully nude and they're cuddling, but it's not, like, sexual at all. It's just, it's artistic nudity.
That's a staple of, like, shoujo-ai anime openings.
Yes.
Because you see it in all of them.
Even when it gets into, like, these 2 girls are having sex, like, it is always very artistic nudity. There's never feels like there's a point where it's like, this is for titillation, which I appreciate, especially considering for the most part that they are high schoolers. So, one of the rare times where I guess give a pass to the naked underage girls, because it's never, ooh, look at this sexy naked girl. It's, this girl is naked because sometimes people are naked and it fits for the scene.
Because it doesn't feel like male gazy or anyone gazy.
There is actually a single panel in the manga where not only do you see, like, they're not drawn in silhouette. Like, not only do you see nipple, you see, like, they drew the vagina. Like, it is a full frontal nude scene, but it's not like sexualized at all. She's just standing in the bathhouse existing.
And I think there's a certain level of maturity to this show, I think.
Oh yeah. And like, you could definitely argue that like, hey, this is still, for all intents and purposes, a child. You don't need to be showing them naked, which I will completely agree with. This is one of those cases where if someone says like, hey, I don't want to watch this, there's a naked teenager in it, 100% can't really blame you. Hard to argue with that.
Yeah, for sure.
But considering the themes of the story and how it relates to like sexuality and all of that sort of stuff, I think it is forgivable.
Well, I think not only just that, but there's a lot of stuff about identity and about like coming of age. Like, I feel like there's a lot of reasons that nudity could be worked in for relatability, for us to understand how the characters are feeling, things like that.
The magazine's tagline of artsy sex comics makes sense here.
Yeah, that does make sense. I do think, too, it's one of those things where it comes down to how, on a personal level, how sexual is nudity to you?
Yeah.
Because I know for me, nudity and sexuality are 2 completely different things. But other people feel like there's less of a divide.
Yeah, and there's probably a conversation to be had there about how the queer community thinks about those things versus the non-queer community, I guess.
Oh, for sure.
But that's maybe a little deeper than we're going to get into here.
Yeah, at least at this point. I have some stuff that I think we'll come back to this later, but it's more speculative.
Considering part of our whole gimmick as a podcast is here's a couple of queer people talking about anime, it's wild that it took us this long to watch something just fully gay.
I watched this 11 years ago, Skillish.
I mean for the podcast. Shut the fuck up.
It's true.
Now, the anime, it began airing in 2009, was produced by JC Staff, and in 2013 received an English-subbed DVD release from Right Stuff Inc., which is a subsidiary of Crunchyroll. You can currently stream the entire series on Crunchyroll, as well as purchase it on both DVD and Blu-ray from their online store.
We watched it on Crunchyroll.
Yeah. So Sweet Blue Flowers is this Yuri series about a couple of different characters, but the two main ones are Akira Okudara, or Achan, and Fumi Manjome, who are these two high school girls that knew each other as like little kids. They were little childhood friends, but then one of them moves away for a few years, they lose touch with each other. Once they start going to high school, they reconnect, and it's this like slow build, bludgeoning is not the word that I meant to use there. I think I meant to say burgeoning. That also doesn't sound right. Blossoming, that's the word. How did it take me so fucking long to find blossoming? Good lord.
I like bludgeoning more than blossoming.
Slow build, blossoming love between these two childhood friends as they realize not just what it means to be in love, but also realize their sexualities and come out as, maybe I have feelings for a girl? Gasp!
This show, I cannot believe how well it handles queer culture.
Especially for, like, because again, the manga started in 2004.
Super early, well, not super early queer culture, because people have always been gay.
Yeah, but in terms of, like, in terms of positive representations in popular media, it's pretty early on.
This has aged like a fine fucking wine.
It really has.
It's fantastic. It's very ahead of its time.
It's very impressive. Not just like the writing is so good, but like the way that they handle just everything having to do with being a young gay person, both the positives and the negatives, because it's not just like, oh, I'm a girl and I love a girl and everything is so nice and I'm discovering myself. Like it touches on the negative aspects as well. There's more of it in the manga than there is the anime. To be fair, I think that's going to go without saying for most of it, because the manga goes longer. But that's something I always appreciate with queer-focused stories. I don't need to see queer people suffering because of how much queer people suffer in real life, but at the same time, I mean, it's less of a thing nowadays, but for a while there, anytime I saw a queer-focused story where everything was just fully hunky-dory and everyone's just okay with gay people and trans people, it's like, that's nice, but that's not real. At least not yet. It's getting there.
Oh my god. The amount of, like, webcomics I've dropped because of that vibe. There was, like, a bunch of stuff that gets touched on this that I don't think gets touched on in all queer media, but should for sure. Like, coming out is very explicitly talked about in the show, for one. The complexity of queer relationships. That's one of those negative things that I feel like gets easily overlooked for the sake of narrative. But, you know, like, people not being able to identify, like, how they really feel about one another and if they're friends or if they have a crush on them, stuff like that. That's a lot more common in queer spaces. Especially
when it's a queer story focused on, like, younger people, like teenagers, because you're having to deal with, like, how do I explain these feelings that are bubbling up inside of me? But when you add on these feelings that I might have might not be the heteronormative ones, it's like, oh fuck, what is happening to my brain and my body and my life?
Yeah. I kind of wish there was, like, a little bit more adversity in the anime, but I think if I read the manga, that will satiate me.
And again, like, I don't want stories that are just about queer suffering, but
I do.
Completely removing... Okay, well, you're weird. But completely removing
It's called hurting comfort.
But completely removing the discouraging parts of being a queer person from your story, just, it makes it feel unrealistic in a way that is unfortunate. Like, I wish that the world could just be completely fine with it, but
and I think, too,
sadly, that's not it.
This series is so grounded in so many ways. It's absolutely fantastic. And, like, it really shines in that aspect. And I think to take those elements away, again, would take away that impact of everything feeling so real.
Using that as a segue to get us back to talking about our characters characters a little bit. I think that a place that really shines is with the first of our main characters, Achan, because her character, she's like the bubbly, excited, really positive one. She's the what some people would probably call like the Genki girl, which I do think she fits that, but
her brother calls her a Genki girl at one point.
Oh yeah, you're right. But the thing is that, like, despite definitely fitting that character type of being, like, the energetic one, it's never over the top. It's never cartoonish. It's never, like, an anime silly person. Like, she feels like a very energetic, outgoing, real teenage girl.
Yeah, my wife just kept looking at me every time she did anything. This is really common, though, this type of main character in shoujo-ai. And I've always wondered, is it because of the progenitors? Like, is it because the protagonists of earlier shoujo-ai were these Genki girls?
I could imagine it's a mixture of the things. I also feel like it probably comes from the fact that our other main character, Fumi, alternatively is the very, like, quiet, reserved, bookish type. And having those two characters, you know, what's it called on TV tropes? Like, the red Oni versus the blue Oni character types, like having them play off each other is just a very it's reused a lot for a reason. It works.
It's so common though in shoujo-ai. Like, I can think of like a list of shoujo-ai shows where it's like a Genki girl x a shy traumatized girl.
Ooh,
like
there's drama,
there's Strawberry Panic, there's what's it called? Sakura Trick's a little bit like that, but Sakura Trick I don't think I could go back and watch. That one was too horny.
That's the sound of me adding Sakura Trick to the list just to torture you.
No, I don't think it's old enough.
Oh, damn. I've never heard of it. Let me check.
It's like a 2012 or something, or 2014 or something. But like 90% of it is just girls kissing and blushing.
Oh, yeah, that's a lot of the Google image results too. Oh, this looks like trash. Never mind.
Yeah, that's why I don't want to go back and watch it, but like, you can see why I liked this when I was 15.
Yeah, side-eyeing a little, but absolutely understandable.
I was their age at the time. I think that's allowed.
Sure. But yeah, so the story kicks off with, I believe it was Fumi. She's the one who moves back into the town, right? She was the one who moved away for 10 years,
yes.
And she moves back. And Fumi and Achan are both starting school. Interestingly, they go to different schools, which was weirdly noteworthy to me. Like, pretty much all high school romances, like all the main characters are going to the same one. I thought it was fun. They go to separate schools.
It is really interesting, but they tie it together really realistically. And I like that a lot about it.
I was reading an interview that Takako Shimura did near like the end of the manga's run, and apparently the entire reason that Achan and Fumi go to different schools is because Shimura wanted to be able to draw both sailor uniforms and blazers.
That fucks.
That's really good.
I love that shit. I love random self-indulgent shit that authors do like that. Oh, it makes my day.
I feel like I'm really going to enjoy anything else that Shimura does whenever we get to it. This is a good energy to have out of a creator, I think.
Oh, yeah.
So, Fumi goes to Matsuoka Academy. Both of these are private schools, private girl schools, but Matsuoka is...
Private?
Yeah, they're both private schools.
I thought Matsuoka was public. I misunderstood.
That's the thing. Matsuoka is a private school, but it's like it seems pretty normal, for lack of a better word. Meanwhile, Achan goes to a school called Fujigaya, which is very like it's a Catholic school, which I don't know why. The aesthetics of like Catholicism and Christianity in Japan are always very like, I don't know, that's just a fun visual.
It's very common again in shoujo-ai.
Oh yeah.
If I had $1 for every time a fucking girl-ex-girl romance took place in an all-girl Catholic school.
It's a good aesthetic.
It's interesting, too, because I feel like it's something that people allude to here as well. And it makes me wonder, like, is this just queer evolution? Cross-cultural, you know?
The series does slightly touch on the idea of when you have spaces like this where it is all girls growing up together and developing together, there is a bit of conversation in the series regarding like, not does going to an all-girl school make you gay necessarily, but more of these girls are developing romances. They might not be gay, it might just be the environment that they're in, and it's the only place that they have for those feelings to develop.
Is that something that actually happens? I was wondering that while I was watching. Like, is it a real phenomenon that people, like, girls in this age group, if they're surrounded by only girls?
So here's Beanie's queer hot take of the day. I don't think that bi-curious exists. I don't think it's just a phase is real. I think if you have ever experienced even a modicum of sexual or romantic attraction to someone of the same sex, you are at least some percentage bisexual.
Okay,
if
but
you eventually decided, like, no, I'm actually straight, that is the heteronormative pressure of society making you think that. I don't think that someone...
I understand this from, like, a comp het perspective. However, if we're looking at sexuality and assuming that sexuality can be fluid over time as people change, I think that's also worth putting out there.
I don't know. I feel pretty strong about if you are a woman who has only ever been with men and you've been with like 500 men throughout your life, one, props to you. Good track history. But you had like one instance in college where you slept with a girl, like, guess what? You're bisexual. Even just a teensy little bit.
Well, it's what you're suggesting is like a Kinsey scale level sort of like preference, where you're weighted towards one binary gender over another.
Yeah, I don't think the Kinsey scale can go down.
No, but it can go into decimals.
Oh yeah, no, like you can be very low on the for listeners who don't know what the fuck we're talking about, the Kinsey scale is basically like a point percentage scale on how gay you are and where you land on that. I take issue with the idea of I take issue with the concept of, like, it was just a phase. It wasn't a phase. That is still a part of you.
However, how is this being applied to people who are homosexual and were straight because they were pressured into being in relationships, you know?
Well, that's what I'm talking about, though. They didn't, like, those were not of their choice. They were pressured into it. If you, of your own volition, had a non-heterosexual experience or a non-heterosexual attraction to someone, if that is a choice that you made or you realized yourself you were having those feelings, that is one thing. If you were a closeted queer person who stayed in the closet, either you were aware that you were gay and you just didn't want to be out, or you didn't realize it until later, and then you look back on it and you're like, oh, I was making myself do those things because I didn't realize. Like, those are two separate things.
Right, but I could see how this sort of narrative could be turned on monosexuals who are not heterosexual, is sort of my concern surrounding it.
I've never heard someone say monosexual.
As opposed to, like, polysexual, not polyamorous, but, like, attracted to more than one gender. So, like, homosexual and heterosexual are forms of monosexuality.
Yeah.
Because you're attracted to one gender.
I can understand what it means. I've never actually heard that term before. That's a new one for me.
It's what I haven't heard in a while. I don't think people use it as much, especially now that the gender binary is opening up more and more for everyone.
I just think putting a cap on this conversation that probably isn't even going to be included in the final edit, I think that people need to be way more open to the concept that they might be bisexual.
My wife's mom actually says there's no such thing as straight women.
Honestly, I would lean more towards that. I think that straight people can exist, but I think the percentage of people who are actually bisexual and just don't realize it or don't allow themselves to realize it because of heteronormative pressure of society is way larger.
Mm-hmm. Like, you could just have a really defined type. Like, you're just really into, like, low-key gamer boys. And you never realize that you like girls because you're so focused on this one type of personality or type of archetype of person that is so endearing to you. Like, there's so many ways that people could be bisexual and not address it at any point in their lives.
Just find yourself a vaguely masculine girl with shaggy blonde hair who plays a lot of video games and doesn't shower as often as she should.
Don't call me out like this.
Continuing on, I really like the art style of this show. The animation is kind of limited, but it doesn't really need to be more than it is. But, like, the art style, like, I love the character designs. They're really cute. And I especially really like the backgrounds and how they look, like, sketchbooky, kind of. Like, they're very simply rendered compared to the character models, which I think is fun.
You know what I think the intention is? I think it's all intended to be very storybook style, because there's so much focus on, like, literature.
Ooh, you You might be onto something there.
Yeah, so I think it's trying to invoke that. And a lot of the characters are artists as well. So it feels very storybook-esque in that sense. And then what's really cool too is in later episodes we see like darker backgrounds. And what they'll do is they'll do the same watercolor, but they'll hatch it.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
it looks phenomenal.
It looks very sketchbooky, like I said. It's very fun.
I feel like it's like those watercolor pens.
I think so, yeah.
I don't know if it's digital or traditional, but I think that's like the inspiration behind the kind of art direction it goes in. But it feels very, very storybook style.
I wouldn't go so far as to say that it is impressive, but it is very pretty.
I think it's impressive in that they're theming aesthetic choices around a lot of the main themes of what's going on. Like, I think that
very well
ties
done.
it together really nicely.
Yeah, it's very well executed, for sure.
I think the theming in this show is just so strong.
I forget the name of it, the name of the town that it's mainly set in, but it is apparently, like, very closely based on the real-world location. Like, the artist of the manga went and lived there for a while and based a lot of the locations on the real-life versions. There was actually... I googled the name of the town that it's set in, and the first image that I found that popped up was of that green train that you see the kids taking to school all the time. It's like, that's the exact fucking thing.
That's awesome.
Speaking of trains, the story kinda kicks off when Fumi and Achan are both going to school. They go to separate schools, but they take the same train to get there the majority of the way. At this point, they do not realize who the other person is. They haven't seen each other in 10 years. They see each other at the train station, and it's like, oh, that girl's kinda cute. That girl's really pretty. They get on the train together. And then Fumi is getting groped by a random dude on the train. Achan saves her from the situation by stepping on his foot. And I had a moment during the train molester thing where I was like, I wonder how often this really happens, or if it's just kind of a weird anime thing. Because there's a lot of things that it's like, yeah, there's a lot of things that happen in anime where it's so prolific and constant that you could understandably think that, like, yeah, this is just... Like, I don't know, the conversation of, like, you shouldn't just base your knowledge of another country on media is a big and important one. But it's just small things. It's small things that you wouldn't really think about until someone points it out.
So for me, I had a professor in college who used to teach in Japan, and she talked about how rampant misogyny was, and how that was why she'd returned to Canada.
Yeah, I was, as much as I didn't want it in my Google search history, I did look into the whole groping and molesting on trains thing, and it is a huge problem. Like, there are women-only train cars specifically to combat this sort of thing. And apparently there's also a rule. There was such a big problem with people taking, like, upskirt photos of women and other creepy things. There's a law in Japan where your cell phone's camera has to have the shutter sound turned on.
Oh.
And apparently, like, there's stories of people, like, from other countries, they go to Japan, and as soon as they connect to any Japanese data or Wi-Fi or anything, their phone setting just automatically changes to turn on the shutter sound.
Oh, that's fascinating.
Right? And also, really depressing.
Yeah.
Also, I want to touch on this real quick. Achan has this really weird line after she saves Fumi from the molester, where she thinks to herself, she's so tall and yet she was crying. That's kind of cute. I'm sorry, it's cute that she was crying while being groped by a stranger? What the fuck, Achan?
I mean, she's a high school student.
That was just a really weird line.
It is a really weird line, but also, like, kids that age don't always understand the gravity of a situation, and Achan seems like the kind of character who wouldn't grasp the gravity of that situation.
I don't know. I feel like that was kind of out of character for her. And it was also, like, one of the only times in the show where I was kind of taken aback by a dialogue choice, so it just stuck with me. Like, that was a weird fucking thing to...
It is a weird choice. I took that not like she was saying that with regard to her crying over the incident, but with regard to the fact that she just kept crying and was inconsolable.
She's saying it specifically talking about, like, it's such a tall and mature looking girl. The fact that she's crying like a child is kind of cute because it's not what you would expect from someone who looks like that. Like, I get why she said it. It's just, there's a time and a place, Achan. Time and a place.
Maybe Achan is just numb to all the skirt grabbing.
Let's not think about that.
That is more depressing.
Going in a different direction, talk about the writing, getting back to talking about how good the writing is. There's another moment from the first episode that really, really stuck with me because I could relate to it so hard, is you get a flashback to when Achan and Fumi were little kids, like 5-year-old kids, and Fumi's getting ready to move, and they're both crying, they're sad, oh, my friend is moving away, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna write you letters every day, I'm gonna write you letters every day, and then you just hear Fumi's narration of a very somber, like, I never wrote her any letters, and she never sent me any either. That is so fucking sad, but also
it's
really realistic.
Relatable.
And yeah, like, that just happens, and it sucks, but sometimes that's just how things go.
Especially with kids. Like, think of all the kids... I don't know if you went to summer camp, but, like, think of all the kids at summer camp, you were like, yeah, I'll call you, and then you just never talk to them again.
What's sad is that the closest experience to summer camp I have would be vacation Bible school.
What I really liked is the way that they find out that they are the people that they were when they were children. I can phrase that better. The way that Achan and Fumi figure out that they are each other is because one of their moms invites the other mom over, and they all go over and, like, have a little family gathering. And I thought that was just so touching and so real
really
and
cute.
so sweet.
Yeah, because obviously the moms are friends because their kids were friends, or it might have been the other way around, whatever.
And, like, the mom is super excited about her friend coming back. It's just so genuinely endearing. I really like the way that adults are written in this show.
They don't play a huge part in the story, but they are written pretty well when they show up. But yeah, I really like the shot when Fumi and Achan meet each other again at their house, and they look at each other and it's like, hang on, you're the girl from the train station, oh my god. It's really cute. Now, for all of the good things that I did have to say about that, and they are still valid, there's a lot of good so far, but, like, I feel like maybe that wasn't a great first episode. Like, it was really pretty, and it introduced the characters very well, but it also, like, it doesn't feel like there's anything there to really hook the audience into coming back just yet.
No, and there's a lot of things that might put someone off.
At the time that this came out, the only hook you really needed was, there's lesbians eventually, we promise. But while that worked in 2009, while that worked in 2009, I don't think that would work for a new viewer today. Like, you do eventually get some noteworthy plot hooks and things that, like, grab you, and it's like, oh, there is something that's going to happen in the show. But it doesn't really come until episode 2 when you find out about Fumi and her cousin.
Yeah, I think the writing really grabbed me, because there's something about slice of life shows when they're really grounded. Like, there's all sorts of slice of life shows, and one that kept coming to mind while watching this was, like, Yuri Camp. But, like, when the characters have natural hair colors, you know shit is gonna be real, you know? That's something I always notice in, like, slice of life anime. Like, oh, this is gonna be, like, really true to life and gritty and real. Not gritty necessarily, but, like, very personal.
What you mean, yeah.
And that kind of grabbed me, and the quality of some of the writing kind of grabbed me. But I don't think it's a very good communication of what the show is.
Yeah,
and I agree
again,
with you in that respect. Like, that train scene, I could see that would put people off.
Yeah. There's a lot in the first episode that is very good. It's fun to watch, but it doesn't have anything to, like, really latch on to the audience and be like, this is why you're watching.
The visuals are nice, but I guess, yeah, they aren't stand out for 2009 anime.
Yeah.
It's very middle of the road, and I think that's probably why a lot of people missed this.
That is a good point. Like, I think this is one of those shows that proves why the 3-episode rule exists. Because if you just watch the first episode, I could totally understand people just not coming back to episode 2.
There's a 3-episode rule?
Oh, you've never heard of that?
No, I try to finish everything I start.
No, yeah, that's a rule that a lot of people have when it comes to watching new shows, is you give anything that you watch at least 3 episodes to grab you. But if you aren't interested by episode 3, then you feel like you've given it enough of a shot and you feel okay with dropping it.
Oh, I just feel terrible about dropping it regardless.
That explains all of the trash that you've seen.
What if that last episode is really good? FOMO!
Laurel, very rarely will a good final episode forgive 12 plus episodes of shit that led up to it. You gotta learn how to drop shit more.
But also I love hate watching stuff. So, the Fumi and her cousin situation is... uncomfortable and upsetting.
Yeah, so you get little hints about it in the first episode, but it's in episode 2 where they really lay it out for you that Fumi is in love with her older cousin. And when I say older, like at least 5 or 6 years, like when Fumi is a teenager, the cousin is an adult.
Yes.
And you find out that they reciprocated, at least nominally. Fully, they slept together. Her older cousin groomed her into sleeping with her. In the manga, at least multiple times. I'm pretty sure they state that it did not happen just once.
I didn't think it happened just once either with how she responded to it in the anime. It's really difficult to watch. It's something that I don't think I fully understood when I first watched this, because again, I was younger. So watching it again as an adult is like, this is difficult to watch. I think the show does a pretty good job at handling it tastefully. It could be done a little better, I'm sure, but it's very clear that this is a source of trauma for Fumi.
Honestly, I think they handle it very excellently. Like, I'm gonna put this as another point towards the quality of the writing in this story. It is uncomfortable and unpleasant, but I think it's handled perfectly.
Yeah, I haven't thought about it enough to say if it's like where I think it could be handled better. It's handled at least tonally very well, though. I don't think it shows too much. It's not too gratuitous. It mostly focuses on Fumi's emotional response.
Mm-hmm.
After finding out that said cousin is engaged to be wed.
Yeah, like that's the thing that kicks off Fumi's whole character is this person who she was in love with, who happened to be her cousin. She gets engaged without telling her, and Fumi is absolutely heartbroken. Because a thing to realize about this very unpleasant and unfortunate situation is that Fumi is not yet at the point where she can comprehend just what a traumatic thing it was that happened to her. In fact, even by the end of the manga, I don't think she actually reaches that point. She currently is still in the space of just, I had this romantic attraction to someone who no longer reciprocates those feelings. She has not yet been able to comprehend the, oh, I was groomed.
So Fumi feels betrayed in this situation as well, because, like, she's assuming that her evil cousin was faithful to her and she was not in fact faithful to her. Like, that's the depth to which she is able to comprehend the situation. And it's really hard to watch because, like, I know people who have been groomed, and, like, when you're that age, you just aren't aware of it.
Yeah.
And it's fucking tragic, and it's horrendous. And also, on top of that, Fumi hasn't identified as queer on her own independently yet. So this person that was putting her in queer situations is now abandoning her. And she feels like she doesn't know who she can trust, who she can talk about even liking girls with anymore.
And to be clear, Fumi does also realize that, like, hey, I probably shouldn't be in love with my cousin, but she can't help it. And another point of clarification I think that should be made, you do get the idea that her cousin did have legitimate feelings for her, regardless of whether or not that was okay. But the cousin, possibly because, you know, she's a fucking adult, she is the one who realizes and acts on the fact of, like, hey, I should not be having a lesbian relationship with my cousin who is a minor. So she's the one who breaks it off and goes for the much more acceptable, I'm just gonna go marry this dude. And Fumi feels betrayed about that also, because it's like, hey, I thought we were in this, you know, forbidden love together.
Yeah. And I think that's really important to touch on, because not only is, like, there the trauma of the incident itself, but there's also that's her response now, because she had a safe space with this person, even if it wasn't truly a safe space. And now she doesn't know how to navigate that. She's trying to find safe people.
I think Fumi also feels betrayed in a way of, you know, we were doing this thing that was wrong, but we were in it together.
Yeah.
And so you leaving it, what does that say about me?
Oh.
Like, her...
It
the
says
fact
that you're 15 and don't know what's going on, but...
But to her mind, I think she sees it as like, oh, because she ended it and she decided, like, oh, this is, you know, capital W, wrong. What does that say about what a disgusting, horrible person I am, that I went along with it for so long and that I thought that it was okay, even slightly. That one's reading a little more into it, potentially, but I think that's also something that you could take there. There's
100%.
Unsurprisingly, in a story about a teenager being groomed by their older cousin, there's a lot going on.
There is a lot going on. I appreciate that this kind of gets phased out. Like, we don't have to deal with this shitty, uncomfortable situation the whole time, but we can give it some attention and discuss what happened.
It is definitely something that colors a lot of Fumi's actions and her relationships, but it's not something that we constantly have to be going back to, like, hey, remember how Fumi got groomed by her cousin? Like, they don't do that, which is appreciated. I will also say, we're not going to get too into this, that's not necessary, but as someone who also was groomed by an adult at a young age, when it can take you a very long time to come to terms with just how bad of a thing that was that happened to you. Like, again, Fumi doesn't really get to that point even by the end of the manga, and yeah, it took me until I was like 22, 23, something like that, to really even begin to comprehend just what actually happened to me at that age, so.
Yeah, I have some similar experiences, not to the same gravity, I don't think, but I also can empathize with that. Like, I feel like it takes a good decade at least. Maybe not. Maybe depending on the person. I don't know. That was just my experience.
Now, moving on from that uncomfortable topic, a couple episodes in, we also get introduced to our two other semi-main characters, Yasuko Sugimoto and Kyoko Ikumi.
I kept getting confused as fuck by their names, because there's a Yasuko, there's a Kyoko, and there's a Ko-chan. So whenever they were talking about Ko-chan at the start there, I kept, like, mixing up who they were talking about, because there's, like, I think one point where Kyoko refers to Yasuko as, like, something similar, like
I think she gets called Ya-chan a couple of times.
Yeah.
I feel like that becomes more of an issue in series like this that have such grounded character designs. It's a lot easier to remember who all of these characters with names in a language that is not your first language. It's a lot easier to remember them when they have, like, spiky red anime hair and incredibly distinctive outfits. When there's a bunch of, like, realistic people, it does occasionally get harder for me to be like, wait, what was your name?
Well, it's not just that. It's also, like, the way that you would address people with their last name until you get to know them. There's that element of Japanese as well.
Yeah. So yeah, Sugimoto is a classmate of Fumi's, and is this, like, she's the handsome, sporty, quote, even the girls want her character type, while Ikumi goes to school with Achan and has more of, like, a Ojo-sama princess kind of vibe.
So the, like, princely feminine character, there is a term for it on TV tropes. Do you know what it is?
It's not just Bishoujo, is it?
It's bifonin.
Yes, no, I did know that. I just forgot.
It's a very clever
I knew it, I swear.
I love it. It's so delightful. It's also one of my favorite character archetypes.
I was thinking about that a lot while I was watching this. The, like, handsome girl that even the straight girls are in love with, like, that is such a Japanese character type. Like, I cannot think of any examples of that type of character in Western media.
Well, in Western media, they'd just be called a tomboy.
Yeah, well, no, you'll have tomboys for sure, but I can't think of an instance where it's like, here's a tomboy that's just so attractive that even the girls are attracted to her. That is a very, like, anime character type that I feel like we could import.
I think it's also, like, culturally because they have stuff like, is it Takakura Review? Is that what it's called?
Takarazuka.
That's culturally a thing there. And they make a lot of references to it with the show, which I love.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, have you ever seen a Takarazuka production?
I have not, but I know of them. And speaking of which, context for the audience, for those who are not aware, Takarazuka Review is a all-women theater group in Japan where a lot of their shows, it's a lot of the women are playing a lot of male characters. So there's a lot of there's a lot of play on gender and a lot of, like, that is a very handsome woman kind of thing. It's very popular to touch on in Yuri series to reference Takarazuka Review.
I've seen one. They did a Phoenix Wright musical, and it was really good.
I think I knew about that, yeah.
So, Fumi wants to sign up for the literature club and signs off on the forms, and then later realizes she didn't sign up for the literature club. She didn't read what she was signing, and she signed up for the basketball club.
So, she signed up for the club with the hot girl in it because she immediately falls for Sugimoto. Sugimoto is hanging out in the literature club room, so she assumes, oh, this person must be a member of the literature club. I want to be a part of the literature club because pretty girl. But it turns out, no, she just hangs around there sometimes. She's actually in the basketball club.
I thought she was being deceitful.
No, I really liked that bit because it's just like, oh, look at you, baby gay, doing something just because you want to look at the pretty girl.
I literally wrote, honestly, if a pretty girl asked me to play basketball when I was 14, I'd be a different person.
So yeah, once we get introduced to the other two girls, we finally have our main sort of cast of four, and what the dynamics end up becoming is Fumi starts dating Sugimoto, mainly as a rebound for the whole cousin heartbreak thing. Ikumi used to... I thought originally that it was that they used to date, and that Sugimoto just, like, breaks up with her and then immediately starts dating Fumi. Turns out it's a unrequited love type thing. Ikumi is in love with Sugimoto, but Sugimoto doesn't reciprocate. So you got Fumi dating Sugimoto, Ikumi loves Sugimoto, and also simultaneously you know that eventually Fumi and Achan are going to get together because that's the point of the fucking show.
Because they're in the opening naked together.
Yeah.
That's what that's there for. That's so that you know that they end up together eventually. That's what that's communicating.
In the beginning, Fumi and Sugimoto are honestly pretty cute together, but because it's a foregone conclusion that Fumi is eventually going to get with Achan, you know it's not going to end well.
Yeah, and Sugimoto, like, looking back on Sugimoto's character, like, I feel like I really didn't like her when I first watched this growing up, and I feel like now as an adult I have a bit more empathy for her. I don't think she's great, but, like, she very much feels to me like someone who is looking to casually date and perhaps seek out polyamorous relationships.
Huh, that is not a read that I had, but I will not combat that either.
Because she's very much keeping herself at arm's length around people and just wants to date casually and doesn't want to date seriously. Which isn't exclusive, but also she talks about her girls.
Yeah, that is one of the first big, like, wedges in the relationship between Fumi and Sugimoto, is the fact that despite the fact that they are supposed to be in a relationship together, Sugimoto still has all of these fangirls throughout the school who think that she's real hot and have little schoolyard crushes on her and shit.
And not only that, but she entertains them a lot of the time.
Yeah, that's the first wedge that really gets in the relationship, is that despite the fact that they're supposed to be together, Sugimoto, she's not cheating, but she is still, like, playfully flirting with everyone, which Fumi understandably gets kind of upset about, which I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. That was one of the things that the manga did way better than the anime.
Really?
Because the anime, honestly, I didn't fully get why Fumi was so upset with Sugimoto. Like, I kind of got it, but it felt a little too... It felt a little too vague. It was just like
vague in the anime.
Fumi starts having these thoughts of like, oh, maybe we're not good for each other. Maybe she doesn't like me as much as I think she does. And it's like, okay,
I felt like it didn't come out of nowhere because it came out of her noticing other girls with their eyes on her girlfriend and her girlfriend looking at other girls.
You can tell where it's coming from, but in the anime it feels a lot more like, oh, this is kind of bullshit teenager stuff. But in the manga, she makes it very clear, like, I do not like that my girlfriend is still flirting with other women. I thought the manga handled that a lot better.
Yeah, if it's more explicit in it, I can see for sure why, like, they condensed it and did it the way they did. But I kind of got those implications, you know?
In the anime, it feels like she's just upset about how popular her girlfriend is. In the manga, it's clear about the flirting.
Because there's the scene where the girls bring her cake, and giving food in Japan is very much, like, especially preparing, like, something and then giving it to someone is very romantic in terms of connotations. That might just be that I was looking at that piece from that perspective. Mm. But, like, I get it. My wife was really upset about it. She was like, I hate her.
Yeah, initially I was like, oh, this is cute. I think Sugimoto and Fumi are really nice together. Because it was mostly just fun to see, like, oh, little baby gay, first relationship. This is adorable. But then as things develop, you start to realize Sugimoto is not the best romantic partner. And it makes sense when things do not eventually work out.
So this is the episode 2 where we start actually seeing the drama club.
Yeah, so both of the girls, or like all 4 of the girls, they end up going to their respective schools' drama clubs. But a thing that happens is Sugimoto originally went to the other school, but transferred in between years. But because she still has connections with that school's drama club, they're like, hey, would you like come and help us with our production, even though you don't go here anymore? Which that was a little weird. That felt like a point of like, hey, maybe it would have been easier to just write all of these characters in the same school. I know you wanted to draw the different outfits, but maybe it would have been easier from
I don't think that's hard to
point if it was
believe.
just the same
I
place.
remember when I was in high school, sometimes we would have friends from like other schools come and visit and just come to classes with us, and nobody would notice.
That's weird. Okay, but like that's not an official capacity like it was here.
No, but I've also seen colleges do it. So it's not outside of the realm of possibility, especially if it's someone who used to go there.
I'm not saying it's impossible. It just felt like it felt like a narrative side effect of the creator's choice to just draw different things.
I don't know. I do feel like it's very believable, though, because I know, like, especially for stagehands, high schools often, like, are a few people short, and people have to run around like maniacs, and like AV and shit like that. So there's the elementary, there's like the junior high, and there's like the secondary presentation, and they're doing The Little Prince, they're doing Little Women, and they're doing Wuthering Heights. Little Women is by one of the Brontes, isn't it?
I have no fucking idea. I've never read any of them.
That's the one that I don't know about in this.
There was a number of times in this show where I thought to myself, like, there's probably so many really interesting narrative parallels between this story and Wuthering Heights that I would be enjoying a lot more if I had ever read Wuthering Heights.
I'm going to talk about Wuthering Heights when we get to the plays, don't worry, because I have some criticisms and I have some compliments. I read all of Wuthering Heights, front to that cover, and I was fucking, like, fascinated by it. It's one of those stories where it's just a bunch of shitty people all making drama for each other. And I love that shit. That's, like, my favorite genre. And it's Victorian. And I love Victorian shit. So I eat that shit up. Actually, it might be Tudor. No, I think it's Victorian. The Brontes, I think, were 1800s, 1700s, 1800s.
Shrug. Speaking of the drama club, another character that we need to talk about very quickly, Mr. Kagami, the theater club's, the teacher who is the theater club's advisor. He is, in the anime, real creepy and weird. Because part of the reason that Fumi and Sugimoto start dating each other is that they both have a recent heartbreak where they were in love with someone who did not reciprocate. And you find out eventually that Sugimoto, she was in love with the teacher, Mr. Kagami, and he turned her down. However, in the anime, he comes off real weird and real creepy, and there's a lot of these little scenes and little shots of, you think like, oh, is he like, does he reciprocate? Did something happen between them? Is he secretly a creepy pedophile or something? Wildly, not there at all in the manga. Even a little bit. Sugimoto had a crush on him. The teacher is like, hey, I'm flattered, but I'm your teacher. And also, eventually gets married to her sister, which that's a whole other bit of trauma to dump on Sugimoto there. But
I believe that they were already dating at that point, too.
Yeah. She fell in love with her sister's boyfriend, who happened to also be her teacher. In the manga, totally chill dude, completely is like, hey, sorry, this can't happen. But in the anime, they add a bunch of little scenes that make you think, like, there's something else going on, which was a weird fucking choice creatively.
Yeah, I actually was really confused by that. I thought he was her dad, and that he abandoned her when she came out.
And
then I went back and read about the episode because I was confused about it.
That's a whole different thing going on.
Yeah, like I was like, oh, this is fascinating, and then I looked it up, and it was like, oh, they're not related. That was romantic? Question mark? And then I had to go and rewatch the whole ass episode.
And it doesn't even end up going anywhere. Like, I watched the anime, and then after it ended, I decided I wanted to read the manga, and I did that. So as I was watching, I kept waiting for them to have the big reveal of, like, oh, he turned her down, but only after, they did something that they shouldn't have, or secretly he is attracted to her, and he is, like, a creepy pedophile dude. But no, but just nothing happens, and they just added all of these really weird scenes for no reason.
I think a lot of it it too is like the dialogue, which I don't know if it's subtitling or if they changed the dialogue between the manga and the anime. But he, like, a lot of it is him saying weird shit that is uncomfortable.
I think there's a couple of bits of it in the manga where it's made uncomfortable if you're thinking that he might reciprocate. Knowing that he doesn't, it comes off more just he is trying to be nice and maybe is not super good at it.
He just seems like he's really, like, not a social person and doesn't know how to handle social situations.
Yeah. There's the one shot in particular that I keep thinking about is, I think it's during preparation for the Wuthering Heights production, where Sugimoto has just gotten done doing like a dress rehearsal sort of thing, you know, gets out of the costume, hangs it up, and has a conversation with Mr. Kagami and leaves. And then there's this weird shot of like, it's got really creepy lighting and shading, and it's just Kagami silently staring at her costume on the rack, and then it cuts. And it implies like, did he like go and sniff the costume or do something creepy with it? Like, why the fuck was that shot in there? It's so weird.
I don't know. I forgot about that. I erased that from my mind.
Probably because it doesn't actually lead to anything, but I was really focused on it. It's like, when are we going to get the reveal that she was also groomed just like Fumi? But no.
That's also sort of what I mean with parallels, which I think is interesting, is because it sets up and then their kind of experiences converge. Does converge mean come together or go apart?
Come together.
They unconverge.
Diverge.
I think unconverge works too.
It super doesn't. I'm going to tell you right now. No, that's not a word.
If Shakespeare could invent words, then so could I.
You are not Shakespeare. You look terrible with a ruffle.
Fuck you! Why do lesbians always kiss in libraries? This isn't a joke. This is a genuine question.
That's not something that I have ever really noticed.
I feel like it happens in a lot of shoujo.
I think I just need to watch more Yuri. I'm gonna keep my eye out for more Yuri library scenes.
Yeah, lesbians are always kissing in libraries in anime, and I don't understand why. That was my bit about libraries. Something about the books just drives the sapphics mad like catnip.
Nothing gets your clit hard like some good literature. Good cliterature. Another thing I really want to touch on is, it's weird, the show is billed as having Achan and Fumi as the main leads, but in the anime at least, it's really the Fumi and Sugimoto show for the most part.
It is a lot of Sugimoto.
Achan mostly just reacts to what's going on in Fumi's life, rather than having any sort of arc of her own.
Achan is the girl best friend who is there for exposition purposes.
Achan makes a very good side character, but she's supposed to be one of our leads. So it's really weird. It definitely comes from the fact that... Well, that's what I was going to say, is that it definitely comes from the fact that the anime only covers, like, the first 3 volumes of the manga.
How many volumes are there total?
I want to say 9? So it's really only the first third
of it.
Yeah. So, okay. This is another thing I was going to touch on a lot later, but it makes sense to put it in here now, I suppose. Sweet Blue Flowers was supposed to continue. It only has the one 11-episode season. It was supposed to continue on and cover the rest of the manga, but apparently the DVD sales were too poor for them to get the funding to keep going. And so that's why like the ending is so abrupt. That's why, little spoiler alert, I suppose, that's why Achan and Fumi don't even get together by the end of the show.
I didn't know that.
It would have happened later on as they continue to cover the manga.
We need to fund our lesbians.
Yeah, we didn't fund our lesbians back in 2009, unfortunately, and so we didn't see the rest of the lesbians happen.
That's so sad.
Knowing that they planned on doing the rest, it makes it a little more forgivable, but in terms of just what we are given with this viewing experience, it is kind of weird.
Do you think, at this point in day and time, that a sequel may be more profitable?
More profitably, yes. Do I think it would ever happen? I feel like if we were going to get more Sweet Blue Flowers anime, they would just start again from the beginning.
Yeah, that's true.
And just have it be a brand new show.
I'd be okay with that.
I would too, honestly. Like, that's something I was planning on touching on in this recording, is I think that the anime, especially, I thought I was a little off just watching the anime, but especially once I read the manga, I realized just how poorly paced some of the anime is. The manga has much better pacing, and in general, I'm just
it's still really delightful to watch, though.
Oh yeah, it's a great watch, but I I do think the manga is leagues better. I honestly kind of wish that we had just read the manga from the beginning.
So, as we were talking about earlier, there's like a lot of really nice queer elements of this show, despite all of the terrible shit we've been complaining about.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those things...
Well, none of the shit we've complained about has to do with the queerness.
That's true. There's a lot of queer joy in this show, though. Mm-hmm. And I think that is delightful. And one of the ways that shows through and really grounds it as queer media is that we have these scenes where characters are coming out to each other. Mm-hmm. And I think the first one in the show, Fumi decides to come out to Achan because she wants to be able to talk about her relationship and what she's going through with someone who can provide an external perspective. Like, she just wants to talk about the shit that's going on with her friend.
She just wants her friend to be a part of her life.
Yeah.
Which, literally just now thinking about it, I think the scene is made more powerful when you consider the fact that they completely lost contact with each other for like 10 years and only in the last like couple of weeks became friends again.
And she's scared of losing her again. Wow. Mm-hmm. That is powerful. I didn't even think of that. But Achan's response is just, it's so genuine and wholesome. So the way that it goes is Fumi says, I'm dating mutual friend, Sugimoto. Please don't think I'm gross. And Achan's response is just, why would I think you're gross? And it's so affirming.
It's really nice. But it's also very realistic because at the same time, Achan, later on, she goes to Ikumi, their other friend, and she has to ask for advice like, hey, theoretically, what would you say if I told you I like girls? And how, like, she wants to support her friend, but doesn't know how.
Coming out on your friend's behalf is a baller move, Achan. Hypothetically, if my friend came out as gay, the person she's talking to is like, oh, she's gay.
Yeah. That was very good. But no, like, there's a moment after Fumi comes out where Achan is like, I need to think about this a little bit, and then comes back and is like, hey, I want to support you. Tell me how to do that. And
yes.
Fumi just says, like, I don't know, just treat me like normal. And Achan's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And then they just keep being friends, and it's really good. It's really good.
It's so endearing. Though I did take the scene of Achan asking around as her playing with the idea that she herself might be gay.
So that is stuff that happens a lot more in the manga, because again, you know eventually they're going to end up together, but the part of the story where Achan starts to realize that she might have feelings for Fumi, that is unfortunately not really gotten to in the anime.
Well, I didn't think that it was about feelings for Fumi. I think it was she hadn't really considered the possibility of being gay, and someone has come out to her, and now she's thinking that it's potentially an option.
Pretty much, yeah. Like Achan's kind of character arc that she eventually gets is she's never really known love, period. And then here her friend comes and tells her that, hey, being in love with a girl is a possibility, and then Achan starts to think, like, maybe that's my thing? Maybe I could be in love with a girl. Am I in love with this girl in particular?
Yeah.
I'm not doing it justice, but it is, it's just another really well-written character arc.
It's so relatable to me as someone who grew up without any gay influences or, like, queer representation in media. It really hit close to home for me. I am curious to hear, describe Wuthering Heights to me as you've learned it from this anime. Vaguely. You don't have to do the full thing. Like, what kind of story is it? Like, what's it about?
Wuthering Heights is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Phantom Blood, except the adopted child is not a psychopath.
No, Heathcliff is a psychopath. You failed.
He doesn't murder the family dog, as far as I'm aware.
I mean, he murders people.
Oh.
You actually had a closer guess than I think the characters in the show had, because they keep talking about it like it's a romance. No! It's a dramatic tragedy. Literally, like,
I get the feeling you are unhappy with their production.
I'm not unhappy. I'm more confused. One of the things that shocked me the most is that last scene. That's halfway through the book.
Oh.
Like, there's another half of the book after Catherine dies that's about like Heathcliff and what he's up to, and there's a daughter, I think. I don't know. It's been a while.
So I'm very curious because, as we've established, I have never read Wuthering Heights. I know nothing about it. But I kept getting the vibes that there was supposed to be narrative parallels between, our characters in Sweet Blue Flowers and what they were going through and the events of the play. Was that a thing? Like, are there any sort of, parallels that you could draw between them? Or was I just kind of assuming?
There's character parallels between Sugimoto and Heathcliff. Because Heathcliff
I was going to say, that was the big thing, is they really seemed to try and draw comparisons between the two of them.
Because Heathcliff is very much an aggressive character who pushes people away. So there's definitely some theming there, and her being the handsome, rugged bad boy. There's theming there, but not the events. Nobody fucking dies, at least in the anime. So I think there's theming there, but I question the author's reading of Wuthering Heights. There is, I think, some theming with Le Petit Prince as well, because they're very focused on this.
The Little Prince.
Le Petit Prince. I read it in French, so I don't know. I don't know the English names of characters and whatnot. But the moment that they're really focused on with Le Petit Prince is a very sad, probably the saddest moment in the book. Again, I wouldn't think of these typically as plays. I would typically think of these as books, which also is kind of a weird thing. I don't know.
There's plenty of books that get adapted for the stage.
I just feel like I've never heard of a school play being a literature thing and not an original play or screenplay or something.
Oh, and to reiterate, The Little Prince is the production that the elementary school is putting on.
The middle school does Little Women, but we only really see a snippet. Yeah. Whereas with
that one's not important
Prince,
as the other two are.
The elementary student comes in and out a little bit more. And there's more theming. There may be theming with Little Women, because I guess they are women. I don't know.
They are indeed.
They're not women, they're girls.
They're little women. Mind blown.
Okay, I think that's the dumbest joke we've made yet. I guess I'll set the stage for what, The Little Prince is. It's a very, philosophical abstract book that's about, a space prince who is going around learning about all the different things that there are. And it's just kind of going around learning things, and the author explores all sorts of, philosophical things. The Rose character that we see, that all the characters gush over how cute she is. The Rose is meant to be a character that is themed around how all things in life are temporary, and the ephemeral nature, and the prince is in love with the Rose. But the Rose is rooted in the ground and can't go anywhere else. Oh. So to stay with her would mean to stop learning new things about the world and the universe. So in the end, he decides to leave, but he always regrets it because he knows that she won't survive on her own. And I think that theming really ties into, the breakup. Ah. Because Fumi is very much, resigned in that she's not looking back. And Sugimoto is having a hard time with her moving on and struggling on her own. And I think that's supposed to be what that is mirroring.
That makes sense, yeah.
Whereas Wuthering Heights represents what drew them together. The Little Prince is what brings them apart.
God, that's really fucking cool, and now I really wish I had previous experience with those things before watching this. I feel like we would have enjoyed that a lot more.
There's some just really relatable stuff, too, that specifically applies to sapphic relationships that I noticed in this show, and being sapphic, that I wanted to touch on, that I really appreciated. There's a couple points where Fumi comes out to other friends, or is incidentally outed to other friends, just by way of circumstance, not any sort of malice. And her response is to apologize. Because she's worried that her friends won't be comfortable around her anymore if she's attracted to girls.
That's a very relatable feeling, especially for, being a teenager coming out in that time period.
Yeah, that was something that hit very close to home, and I was impressed by the fact that A, they included it, and B, that they addressed it so well.
Let's not pretend that being gay is just a fully accepted thing now. It's obviously not. It's more accepted, of course, than it was, 2 decades ago, but it's still, there's a lot of people who still aren't okay with it.
And it depends where you are.
Yeah, but the idea of, outside of, very specific communities and circles, the idea of feeling guilty for being gay, I think, is a very, I don't want to say dated, but that rings much more true to, when you and I were teenagers. Then I don't think a teenager coming out today would, they could feel endangered coming out, sure, but I don't think they would feel guilty about it. I think we have at least evolved enough as a society where young gays don't have to feel guilty about it, even if they do still have to be wary of it, wary of who they come out to.
I don't know if I agree specifically in the context of sapphic people, because women all are united in that they feel threatened by men. So for a woman to have a gaze that is anywhere comparable to the male gaze, like, I think guilt can manifest from that feeling. So I think it's a bit more complex than that.
You make a very good point there, yeah. I have seen a number of sapphic people making comments about, like, oh, I'm attracted to my... This is actually, interestingly enough, this is something that gets touched on in the manga portion of this, where Fumi feels bad about having sexual thoughts about Achan.
Yeah, like that.
I'm ashamed that my brain is sullying my good friend like this.
Yeah, well, not only that, but, like, if you're in high school, like, you're gonna have to be getting changed together for gym classes and stuff like that. Like, not in this case, but maybe with, like, some of the other, like, friends and whatnot.
Yeah.
Or for someone who was this age. Like, there's situations where you feel like you're in a space you're not supposed to be in if you're attracted to women, because it's not safe for women because you're there.
That makes sense. Yeah, you make a good point there. I would potentially make an argument where there's a difference between, like, feeling bad about being gay specifically versus feeling bad about what being gay can lead to, I guess. That's a weird way to say it, but, like,
I'm specifically talking to her apologizing to people for being gay and coming out to them. I think that's where that stems from, personally.
I got the read that she was just apologizing because she assumes people will think the idea of her being a lesbian alone is gross. I don't think it was so much like, I'm sorry for my actions as a gay person. It's I'm sorry for my existence as a gay person.
But why would people think that it's gross? You're kind of, like, teasing out the different aspects of it.
I guess that's fair, yeah. So it was touched on a bit way earlier. We kind of jumped around a little bit, but eventually, both during the play and a little bit after, both during the production, we start to see some wedges happen in the relationship between Fumi and Sugimoto, where Fumi is starting to have some issues with how Sugimoto acts around other girls, and she learns about Sugimoto's unrequited love, unrequited, I keep pronouncing that wrong. She eventually learns about how Sugimoto is in love with, what was his name? Kazuki?
Kazus has the sister. Kagami is, I think, the teacher.
Yeah, the teacher. Fumi eventually learns about how Sugimoto is in love with the teacher, and she starts having very understandable concerns about, like, oh, is she going to keep being in love with me? Is her love for me real? Or is it am I just a rebound, in the same way that I think she eventually realizes Sugimoto is just a rebound for her cousin?
Yeah.
But they have some conflict, and what that eventually leads to is Sugimoto is like, no, I am going to prove to you that I love you. I want you to meet my family. And Sugimoto takes Fumi to her house to meet her three sisters and her mom and her maid, I guess, housekeeper. She's got a big house, rich family, so there's a attendant or whatever there. Yeah, I said three sisters.
Oh, and the attendant is, like, the person at the front. Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't remember if it was in the anime, but there's a funny bit in the manga where it turns out that the old housekeeper lady is also named Fumi, and they make some jokes about it that are very cute.
Oh, that's really cute.
But, again, as a former baby gay, this was an uncomfortable scene where Sugimoto is introducing Fumi to her family, and all of her sisters and her mom are like, oh, you're so nice, you're so polite, and they're having fun. And then, out of nowhere, Sugimoto's like, I'm gay, this is my girlfriend. I'm just like, holy shit, Sugimoto, do not wrap your girlfriend into your coming out without warning her first. What the fuck is wrong with you? You should not do that.
Have you ever had this happen? Have you ever been roped into your partner's coming out?
Thankfully, no. I have not been roped into a partner's coming out. I have been outed against my will, which is what happens here to Fumi. Like, good for Sugimoto for having the courage to come out to her family.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Absolutely should have asked Fumi ahead of time, like, hey, are you okay with me are you okay with being here while I'm coming out to my parents? parents. The better situation would have just been Sugimoto telling her family, hey guys, I'm gay. Would you like to meet my girlfriend? But poor Fumi just gets ambushed into the whole situation, and it is very uncomfortable.
This is a believable aspect to me, though, because it really seems like she hasn't come out to anyone yet, other than, like, a couple of the girls at school. Like, she hasn't come out to her family yet. So she doesn't really understand the consequences if all of her school friends that she's told are also sapphic, you know? She doesn't understand the gravity of the situation. She hasn't lived that experience yet and had a negative response.
Another thing that happens in the same episode, which I will relate back in a moment, this is also the episode where Fumi and Sugimoto end up breaking up, because Sugimoto essentially just goes with the, like, I'm not good enough to date you mentality, which is such a bullshit teenager thing.
It's Sugimoto who says that she isn't in a place to date anyone, isn't it?
Yeah, she says, like, oh, I'm not good enough yet. I need to work on me before we can be together. But, like, breaking up with someone,
you shouldn't have asked them out in the first place, because
you should let the person, that should be their choice whether or not you're good enough for them. Breaking up with someone because I'm not good enough for you, it's this bullshit teenager mentality. But the characters are bullshit teenagers, so it's very realistic.
It's very much, I don't want to tell you the reason I'm breaking up with you.
Yeah, but in a similar way, Sugimoto, like, ambushing Fumi with her coming out to her family. Again, that's a very bullshit teenager thing.
That might have influenced how receptive she was to the breakup, too.
Yeah. Yeah. So continuing on, I really like how they ended up doing things with Fumi and Achan, because Fumi and Sugimoto just rushed into things without really knowing each other, and it ended just as quickly as it began, because whether or not they realized it at the time, they were both each other's rebound, essentially. But in contrast, you can really feel them, like, building up Fumi and Achan's friendship. Like, even in just the anime. Like, the anime ends, like, right before Achan starts to realize, oh, I might be in love with Fumi. And even that, you can really feel it getting to that point. And I think they do a really good job with it. And it feels earned when they do eventually get together. Like, it is a really, really well-written, slow build romance, I think.
Yeah, it's very charming, and it's very friends to lovers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my wife and I, we were friends for like 4 years before we started dating, and I kept thinking, like, oh, this feels very familiar.
I feel like I've had a bit more to complain about than I expected, but pretty much all of my complaints have been almost exclusively levied against the anime. I cannot understate just how good the manga is. And a lot of the flaws of the anime just come from the fact that it didn't finish.
Get a lot of really nice slice of life episodes toward the end.
That's another thing, speaking towards the quality of the eventual Fumi and Achan thing. I'm glad that they put so much space between Fumi and Sugimoto breaking up and her eventually getting together with Achan. It helps the relationship feel honest and not just another rebound. What?
I did the rebound thing. And then for the first 6 months was paranoid and like, oh god, what if she's just a rebound? What if I fucked everything up? So you are preaching to the choir.
I want to talk about Fumi a little more, because there's something about her character that I appreciated. I thought it was done very well, and I also regrettably related to quite a bit. It's something that she herself mentions in narration very early on, where she has a big problem saying no to people.
You know why that is?
Why?
Because she has no self-esteem.
Oh, yeah. Again, relatable. Because, like, she's pressured into joining the drama club. She doesn't want to do that at first. She's pressured into helping out with that. She almost says as a joke at first, she's like, oh, I gotta get better about saying no to people. But then that becomes a recurring theme of her character. And then you think about things like the cousin bit, and it's like, ooh, that makes that sting a little bit. And
I mean, that's why she has no self-esteem, is because people probably didn't respect her boundaries. And her cousin probably didn't respect her boundaries.
Yeah.
And then she doesn't have a lot of support from people around her.
Until she regains her friendship with with Achan, which I will say in the manga kind of leads into why they get together, which is very nice. But near the end of this show, near the end of the anime, there's a really, really great moment, which is like my favorite character moment for Fumi in general, where Fumi and Achan go on this little trip together, and Sugimoto, this is post the breakup, Sugimoto pressures Achan into letting her come with so she can try and patch things up with Fumi. And I was so fucking proud of Fumi when she just very flatly and directly is like, I do not want you here. I'm done having you in my life. Please leave. Like, yes, you go, girl. I'm so proud of you, sweetie.
It's in the sweet fucking cave.
What
a place to set that scene.
I do also want to be clear, like, Sugimoto is definitely in the wrong in a lot of these interactions, but you also, especially when you consider that, once again, bullshit teenager, you do also see where she's coming from. Like, I can absolutely see myself as a dumb teenager in a similar situation where, like, oh, I've hurt someone, I want to make it better, but I don't realize the thing that will make it better is not putting myself in their life.
Yeah. She's very assertive, and she wants to fix things instead of just letting things be. Like, doing things is making her feel better.
She's assertive, but she's not malicious, I think is the thing.
Yeah, for sure. Which is, again, why I pointed at the poly reading, because it really just seems like she's trying to casually date and not have a serious relationship. And she's like, she doesn't necessarily, when it's not stated, she doesn't assume monogamy in her relationship. Not to say that poly people can't be aware of stuff like that, but I think if you're a dumbass teenager...
Yeah, there's a moment in the episode where Fumi is over at her house talking to her sisters, where one of the sisters, I think, also makes a very good, like, she mentions something related to this, where Sugimoto has always kind of been the center of attention, and she's not really good about things not going her way.
Yeah.
Which I think also plays into, like, when she and Fumi are dating, but she's still flirting back with all of the girls that are fawning over her. Like, she probably, like, fully doesn't comprehend why that would even be a problem, because she's just so used to it.
Yeah.
Now, we've mentioned multiple times throughout the recording about how, representation of queer people and queer media has changed throughout the years, and how things about this show are maybe different compared to something we might have today, blah, 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 blah. But I do think it is worth noting that when this came out, this was considered, like, the Yuri manga and Yuri anime at the time. Like, there are so many different reviewers and publications that consider this to be just, like, the greatest Yuri that's ever been made. I think even today, a lot of people still put this really, really fucking high on the list. This is considered a important seminal piece of Yuri work.
And yet it ended after 11 episodes?
I feel like more so the manga than the anime.
Oh, that's true, because the manga would have still been coming out.
Yeah, but even then, a lot of people, when the anime did come out, I saw a couple of... There's, I forget her name, but it's a woman who is apparently the founder of something called YuriCon. Take a guess what that's about. Who also runs a review site covering, like, Yuri stories and such, that called this the best anime of 2009. Or at least the best Yuri anime of 2009.
Astrally projecting to YuriCon. I'm in my mind palace there.
So off of that, let's go ahead and hop into the retro views. First one I got is from Them Anime Reviews, reviewer Bradley Meek, who says, "We should all be so lucky to have the kind of relationship Fumi and Akira share. Unlike other series where we are regularly reminded these characters are friends, we know. We know by how they act with each other, how they look at each other, and how they talk to each other. It's the kind of intimacy that only comes once in a lifetime, if you're lucky. Our hobby is filled with fantasies. I see nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's one of the reasons I love it. But in a world of convenient lies and easy fictions, people hunger for truth. Aoihana has that. It honestly reflects something about us and how we interact with each other." I really liked that. I really liked this whole review. It's very, very well written.
It feels tonally perfect for the show. Because the show is very much about the journey and not the destination. Because we're really...
Especially because it doesn't finish. Sorry, that's a little mean, but...
I meant because, like, we don't start with Achan and Fumi. We start with other relationships and then progress towards that. But that's really funny.
I should have mentioned this earlier and I forgot, but I do want to mention when we first get introduced to Sugimoto and Ikumi, it was very obvious from the beginning that Sugimoto and Fumi were going to start dating, if only for a little bit. But I thought the same thing was going to happen with Achan and Ikumi, and I was like, oh, do you both get your own starter lesbians?
Fighting on Route 203 with our starter lesbians. That's just a really good review. And, like, I don't have anything negative to say about it. Usually I like to give them a little bit of hell. But this is just a delightful one, and it's very philosophical, which I love.
I really like how Bradley puts it. Like, I just grabbed little snippets out of all the reviews. I never just pull the whole thing, because that would take way too long to read, and also maybe count as plagiarism. I don't know. I just take parts. But the whole thing is just more of this, and I really like the way he puts it. Like, that is a perfect summation of this story and how well it does in... See, this is what I'm talking about. Bradley's doing a way better job than me, who can't find their fucking words. But I said it at the start of the recording, like, it's nice to watch something nice. We've watched good things, but I think this is the first thing that's just nice. It's just pleasant.
I mean, Golden Boy was nice, but it was like, nice.
Golden Boy is frat boy nice. This is
Golden
just
Boy
like...
is nice. This is like...
nice.
Yeah.
Now, the other review I have, this is Anime News Network. This is from Casey Brienza. We haven't met this person yet.
Hello,
this is from 2009.
Casey.
Oh my god. There's remarkable sensitivity when it comes to the character's sexuality. This is not some utopian alternate universe Japan that resembles the real one in every respect, except that nobody seems to have problems with gay and lesbian relationships. There is one particularly memorable moment when Sugimoto comes out to her three sisters and mother. They are not happy. One of them even makes a hurtful comment, but they do not deny her selfhood in any way. There is also a similar conversation between Fumi and Akira, where Akira has to assure her friend that sexual orientation will not get in the way of their friendship. There is something at once comforting but immediate about this in Aoihana. It manages to strike just the right balance, which is remarkably hard for most anime series to do. The Aoihana anime is, in short, just a single episode in the lives of Fumi and Akira. It's good for the fans and pushes all the right buttons, but it is not a definitive, nor the most nuanced, treatment. Still, there are worse 11-episode anime series out there, by far, and as Yuri anime, it is admittably hard to find better. I think that does potentially, because I mentioned earlier about how this was called like one of the best Yuri anime of all time and the best Yuri anime of that time and everything, and it is more understandable when you remember the context of just how
bad everything was.
Yeah, how different the landscape was at the time.
I mean, think about Aki-kan.
I mean, I was speaking mainly just in terms of Yuri, because even in Yuri spaces, I think representation was maybe a little...
There has always been, like, a lot of issues with, like, predatory relationships in queer media, especially, like, yaoi and Yuri.
I think this might have been from another part of Casey's review that I just didn't pull, or it might have been a different review, I'm not sure. But there was one that I was reading that was like, normally with Yuri, it comes in two flavors. It's either fan service bait or it's just really, really boring. And especially for the time, I think that is one of the ways that Sweet Blue Flowers really shines as just like, finally, some good fucking food.
I don't know that I would describe any as boring. I can't think of like a show that I watched and I thought, that was boring. Like usually my issues with stuff are more about the tone or like the way they treat topics or just events that are happening, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I've ever found an anime boring.
Now, how much of this was from you were watching all of these things when you were a newly gay high schooler and you just were really excited to see lesbians and weren't thinking critically?
I'm still really excited to see lesbians.
Okay, but we're talking about things from that time period, not necessarily just today as well.
Right. But I don't think there was it. I think that, like, I don't think that being boring is the issue. I think the issue is primarily like that shit is gross.
Yeah.
You know? Like think of like the Citrus manga. Think of like Sakura Trick had all like the weird ciscon stuff. Like there's always gross shit.
Mm-hmm.
that bothers me more than the show being boring.
And you could argue that there is gross shit in this with the cousin thing and the teacher thing and whatnot, but they're not
tonally well. It's not like there's a tone dissonance. That's the bigger issue. It, like, not to say that, like, depicting it isn't something to be done delicately.
This gross shit isn't there to make you horny like the other gross shit is.
Well, it's either that or it's just ignorance or it's some horrible third option.
It's not, I can think of a lot of anime that do this, where you're taking a sensitive topic and you're putting it in your show, but you're not putting it in your show because you want to have a discussion about it. You're putting it in it because it's edgy.
Or a joke.
Yeah, like...
Which I think is more, like, this show, at least if you're watching it, it handles sensitive subjects with a level of gravity that's appropriate, that you don't get tone whiplash.
Yeah.
With other stuff, like, good God, I don't know if you've watched Yaoi. Good God.
I've watched a couple. Oh, eventually we'll touch on Junjo Romantica.
Like, yeah, like, I'm thinking of, like, Junjo Romantica 2, and, like, stuff like that, where it's, like, it's not boring, it's just, there's some horrible element to the relationship.
So much yaoi is just rape.
Yeah, that's what I'm alluding to.
Yeah.
We already have the trigger warning on this episode.
Now, I do want to make a couple of more points regarding the manga, which is going to be a little one-sided since you didn't read the... Did you only ever watch the anime back in the day, or did you also read the manga?
Anime.
Yeah, so another point that I really want to put in the manga's favor, Ah-chan is way more of a character. She gets a lot more to do after the events of the anime, but even during the stuff the anime covered, she just feels more involved, I would say.
The focus really seems to shift away from Sugimoto after the breakup until the wedding, because the teacher and the sister get married. So that's kind of weird. But
Sugimoto stops existing. She fucks off and like transfers to do studies in Europe or some shit. At this point, it is pretty clear that I think the manga is way better. If you are going to experience Sweet Pea Flowers at all, read the manga. Anime isn't bad, manga's just leagues better. There are a couple of points where I do have some criticisms on the manga. It is not perfect. One is that after the events that like the anime covers, once they get into their second year of high school, it introduces a lot of new characters very quickly, and all of those new characters at once paired with the simpler characters, similar as in like they're realistic, it can be really hard to keep track of them. Even by the end, there was a couple of characters where I'm like, who the fuck are you again?
Especially like if there's no color element.
Yeah, black and white manga and everything. Luckily, the characters who are like capital I importance that are introduced after that point are nice and clear, but there's a lot of side characters where I kind of just started to glaze over them because I just realized I couldn't keep track of who was who.
This is lesbian number 14.
This is just side character number 14. The other thing I will say, it's not horrible, but the ending is very abrupt. It was one of those instances where I clicked next page, because I was reading this on an app, and I clicked next page, and I was like, oh, that was it. Huh. Like, I'm not going to say it was a bad ending. I would say that it could be a lot better, and it just took me off guard with how quickly it ended.
Yeah, one of those.
Jumping to that very nebulous, barely a segment where we ask, would you recommend this today? For me, 100%, but specifically the manga.
I think I would recommend both. Based on what you've said about the manga does seem like it's better. But I feel like
I do think you should read the manga first.
Ah, interesting.
There is a world where I could see someone like, oh, I'm gonna watch the anime and then I'll read the manga for like what happens after. But I do think the anime has some that I think would be fine, but I do think the anime has some pacing issues. I think it gets a little slow at points. Ah-chan is significantly less of a character, and it adds that weird, unnecessary shit with the teacher man, where I think just starting off from the manga is better. And then if you feel like it, you can watch the anime just as like a fun extra thing, because it is, if nothing else, very pretty.
Sure. I just mean like if you're the type of person who really prefers to watch something over reading something and might not get around to reading it, it, I think this would be worth a watch.
I guess that's fair, yeah.
And it's very cozy and it's very atmospheric. Like, there's a lot of aspects to it that are just nice.
It's nice.
It's nice. If you don't have a preference, go for the manga. But if you are like me and hate reading, just watch it. It's fine.
And especially if you're like a little baby gay, like I really legitimately wish that I had found this back when I was a freshly queerified teenager. Like this would have been a wonderful thing for me to get to experience at that period in my life. There's a part of me that's like actually a little sad that I didn't know about this at the time, and I wish I had. Anyway, thank you for listening to our podcast.
If you want more of our content and to keep up to date on new shit that's happening, you can follow us at Weeb Years on Blue Sky.
And also, if you have listener questions or want to give suggestions or anything like that, we have a mailbox, theweebyears@gmail.com. And as usual, we would super duper appreciate if you would leave a comment, drop a like, follow, subscription, whatever service you're listening on. We love doing this podcast. Leave a review, exactly. We love doing this podcast, and if you help us grow, we'll be able to do even more of it.
We're really excited for all the stuff that is planned. There's so much. Oh god, there's so much.
That spreadsheet is massive. Anyway, see you next time.
Bye.